Oh, hi! I've got a question. Was there ever a time that you were a victim of fake news? And did you ever misunderstand an information that was relayed to you? It sucks, right? Well, you see, misunderstanding information can lead to problems big or small. And being able to distinguish this subtle subtext in order to identify factual information from fake news, from editorial, or even propaganda is crucial into interpreting the true meaning and intent. And this is why having this well-developed skill in critical analysis of discourse is of utmost importance. And today, I'm going to take you on a tour in identifying the key terms of discourse analysis. My name is Tubio, and this is my report. So what is discourse analysis?
Discourse analysis is a research method for studying written or spoken language in relation to its social context. It aims to understand how language is used in real-life situations. Discourse analysis is also called discourse studies, and it was developed during the 1970s as an academic field. Discourse analysis is a broad term for the study of the ways in which language is used between people, both in written texts and spoken contexts.
Discourse analysis is a common qualitative research method for humanities and social science disciplines, such as linguistics, anthropology, psychology, and even cultural studies. And when we do discourse analysis, what are the things that we should focus on? When you do discourse analysis, you might focus on the following.
When you do discourse analysis, you might focus on the following: the purposes and effects of different types of language, cultural rules and conventions in communication, how values, beliefs, and assumptions are communicated, and lastly, how language use relates to its social, political, and historical context.
What are the key takeaways for discourse analysis?
Here are some of the key takeaways that you should remember about discourse analysis. First, discourse analysis looks at conversations in their social context. Second one is, discourse analysis melds linguistics and sociology by taking into account the social and cultural context that language is used. And lastly, it can be used by businesses, academic researchers, or the government, or even any person or organization that wants to better understand an aspect of communication. When it comes to discourse analysis, one has to remember that the focus is on the context. It is of utmost importance to be able to read between the lines of any verbal and/or written communication.
And what is discourse analysis used for?
Conducting discourse analysis means examining how language functions and how meaning is created in different social contexts. It can be applied to any instance of written or oral language, as well as nonverbal aspects of communication such as tone and gestures.
By analyzing these types of discourse, researchers aim to gain an understanding of social groups and how they communicate.
Here now are some suitable materials that we can use for discourse analysis. First on deck are the print media. This includes books, newspapers, and periodicals. We can also make use of websites, forums, social media posts, and even comments. Next on our disposal are the marketing materials such as brochures and advertisements on TV and radio programs. We can also make use of interview minutes and minutes of conversations that transpired in business meetings. We can also make use of government documents like gazettes or even speeches broadcast on TV and radio. So, as a form of a recap, here are now all the materials that were mentioned earlier that are suitable for discourse analysis. They are again print media, marketing materials, business and government documents, websites, forums, and social media, interviews, and conversations.
And how is discourse analysis different from any other methods? Let's find out.
Unlike linguistic approaches that focus only on the rules of language use, discourse analysis emphasizes the contextual meaning of language. Unlike grammar analysis, which focuses on the structure of sentences, discourse analysis focuses on the broad and general use of language within and between particular groups of people. Another important distinction is that, while grammarians typically construct the examples they analyze, the analysis of discourse relies on actual writings and speech of the group being studied to determine popular usage. In terms of textual analysis, Grammarians may examine texts in isolation for elements such as the art of persuasion or word choice, also known as diction, but only discourse analysis takes into account the social and cultural context of a given text. In terms of verbal expressions, discourse analysis takes in the colloquial, cultural, and living use of language, including each and every and as well as slips of the tongue and awkward pauses. Grammar analysis, on the other hand, relies entirely on the sentence structure, word usage, and stylistic choices. This does, of course, often include a cultural ingredient, but it's missing the human element of spoken discourse.
So, how do we conduct a discourse analysis? First, you have to keep in mind that discourse analysis is a qualitative method and an interpretive one when it comes to analyzing texts. This is in contrary to other more systematic methods such as content analysis. When it comes to discourse analysis, you have to make interpretations based on the details of the materials itself and also on the contextual knowledge. There are many different kinds of techniques and approaches that you can use to conduct discourse analysis. And the steps on the next slides are the basic steps that you need to follow. Step 1. Define the research question and select the content of analysis.
To do discourse analysis, you begin with a clearly defined research question. Once you have developed your question, select the range of material that is appropriate to answer it. Discourse analysis is a method that can be applied both to large volumes of material and to smaller samples, depending on the aims and the timescale of your research.
Step 2. Gather information and the theory on the context.
Next, you must establish the social and historical context in which the material was produced and intended to be received. Gather factual details of when and where the content was created, who the author is, who published it, and whom it was disseminated to. As well as understanding the real-life context of the discourse, you can also conduct a literature review on the topic and construct a theoretical framework to guide your analysis.
Step 3. Analyze the content for themes and patterns.
This step involves closely examining various elements of the material, such as words, sentences, paragraphs, and overall structure, and relating them to attributes, themes, and patterns relevant to your research question.
Step 4. Review your results and draw conclusions.
Once you have assigned particular attributes to elements of the material, reflect on your results to examine the function and meaning of the language used. Here, you will consider your analysis in relation to the broader context that you established earlier to draw conclusions that answer your research question.
Instead of focusing on smaller units of language such as sounds, words, or phrases, discourse analysis is used to study larger chunks of language, and this includes entire conversations, texts, or even collections of texts. The selected sources can be analyzed on multiple levels.
Sources have different levels of communication, and in each level, there are things being analyzed. For the level of communication vocabulary, words and phrases can be analyzed for ideological associations, formality, and euphemistic and metaphorical content. And what's being analyzed for the level of grammar is the way that the sentences are constructed. For example, the verb tenses, active or passive construction, and the use of imperatives and questions, for they can reveal aspects of intended meaning. And as for the structure level, the structure of a text can be analyzed for how it creates emphasis or builds a narrative. As for genre, texts can be analyzed in relation to the conventions and communicative aims of their genre. Examples are for political speeches or tabloid or newspaper articles. And for nonverbal communication, nonverbal aspects of speech, such as tone of voice, pauses, gestures, and sounds like can reveal aspects of a speaker's intentions, attitudes, and emotions. And lastly, the conversational codes. The interaction between people in a conversation, such as turn-taking, interruptions, and listeners' response, can reveal aspects of cultural conventions and social roles. All of the sources I mentioned are essential in discourse analysis, but the focuses of today's seminar are the vocabulary, grammar, and structure, which will be elucidated in the discussion of semantics and syntax. To ease our way into today's discussion, let me help you with the introduction of some of the key terms of discourse analysis: semantics and syntax. Semantics is the field of linguistics that is concerned with the study of meaning in language. Linguistic semantics has been defined as the study of how languages organize and express meanings. The term semantics was coined by French linguist Michel Maril, who is commonly regarded as a founder of modern semantics. On the other hand, in the field of linguistics, syntax refers to the rules that govern the ways in which words combine to form phrases, clauses, and sentences. The term syntax comes from the Greek language, which means arranged together. The term is also used to mean the study of the syntactic properties of a language. Now, to retrieve the content of this report, you may refer to the following sources.
And that's going to be it for my report. I'll be handing over the floor now to Ms. Jenevie ARIMBUYUTAN. Again, this has been Karen Tubio BAYA. Thank you so much for listening, and you have a great day.
Meaning is everything in communication. How we view the world and express our ideas and thoughts about it are channeled through language. When learning the English language, understanding the differences between semantic and pragmatic meaning can be a valuable tool to maximize your linguistic ability. Although both are terms used in relation to the meanings of words, their usage is drastically different. If you want to know what a word means, all you have to do is to look it up in the dictionary, right? But it's a little more complicated than that, because there are problems with relying on the dictionary to give a word meaning. One of this is dictionary is made by people like us who still need some other ways of figuring out what words mean. Another is writing a definition isn't always the most effective way of pinning down or providing the meaning of a word. The area of linguistics interested in meaning and the many ways that we can describe it is semantics. Sometimes we don't always say exactly what we mean, and yet we're still pretty good at understanding each other. If I ask, "Can you close the door?" you will probably interpret the question as a polite request rather than a question of your physical ability. That's because we don't just use meaning to figure out what's going on. We also use context. The area of linguistics that puts meaning in the context is pragmatics. Good day everyone, I am Jenevie ARIMBUYUTAN, and today I will be discussing about semantics. Let us further discuss what semantics is. Semantics comes from the Greek word semantikos, which means to show or give signs. Griffith 2006 defines semantics as the study of the word meaning and sentence meaning abstracted away from context of use. Semantics as the study of meaning is essential to the study of language acquisition, or how language users acquire a sense of meaning as speakers and writers, listeners and readers, and of language change, or how meaning alter over time. It is important for understanding language in social contexts, as these are likely to affect meaning, and for understanding varieties of English and effects of style. It is therefore one of the most fundamental concepts in linguistics. Language has a unique role in conveying meanings. Meanings are considered to be the soul of semantics, and today we're going to discuss three basic types of meanings. These are conceptual meaning, connotative meaning, and social meaning. What Geoffrey Leach 1981 calls as conceptual meaning is the same as what other scholars call denotative, designative, cognitive, or descriptive. It is also called logical meaning. It is the basic propositional meaning which corresponds to the primary dictionary definition. For example, P or letter P can be described as voiceless and bilabial and also plosive. Similarly, the word boy is described as human and male, but not an adult. In short, it is the literal meaning of the word indicating the idea or concept to which it refers. Since conceptual meaning deals with the core meaning of expression, it is essential for the functioning of language. For example, A part of the conceptual meaning of needle may be thin, sharp, or instrument. In this example, it shows that the aim of conceptual meaning is to provide an appropriate semantic representation to a sentence or statement, and that makes the conceptual meaning as the base for all the other types of meaning. Now let us discuss the second basic type of semantics, which is connotative meaning. Leach 1981 calls connotative meaning as the communicative value an expression has by virtue of what it refers to over and above its purely conceptual contents. That means that connotative meaning is indeterminate and open-ended. This is because this depends upon the knowledge and beliefs of the speakers and may belong to any characteristics of the referent, real or imaginary as identified by the speaker. For example, the noun phrase brown bear literally signifies a large omnivorous mammal known scientifically as the Ursus arctos, but there are various cultural or emotional meanings attached to a word. It may provide one or more deeper levels of meaning. These subjective meanings are known as connotations. For example, a camper might hear brown bear with a connotation of fear and panic. On the other hand, brown bear might mean friendship, comfort, and security for a child who plays and sleeps with a stuffed animal. This means that connotative meaning is concerned with the real-world experience one associates with a linguistic expression one uses or hears. Social meaning is the information which a piece of language conveys about the social circumstances of its use. In other words, the meaning conveyed by the piece of language about the social context of its use. Here, Leach 1981 includes under social meaning variation in all the aspects of language structure like pronunciation, intonation, sentence structure, etc. as revealing social meaning. The decoding of a text is dependent on our knowledge of stylistics and other variations of language. This just means that we recognize some words or pronunciation as being dialectical, like as telling us something about the regional or social origin of the speaker. For example, I ain't done nothing. The line tells us about the speaker and that is the speaker is probably a black American, unprivileged, and uneducated. Stylistic variation represents the social variation. This is because styles show the geographical region, social class of the speaker. Style helps us to know about the period, field, and status of the discourse. For example, the words steed, horse, and nag are synonymous. They all mean a kind of animal which is a horse, but they differ in style and so have various social meaning. Steed is used in poetry, horse is used in general, while nag is a slang word. This means that social meaning is related to the situation in which a word is used. As we know, language is divided into three components, the first of which is sound, the second is form, and the third is meaning. The branch of linguistics that studies sound is phonetics, and the other one is phonology. Under form are words, phrases, and clauses or sentences. The branch of linguistics that studies words is morphology, and the branch that studies phrases and clauses is called syntax. Now for meaning, which is our focus in the discussion, as I've discussed earlier, the two branches that study meaning are semantics and pragmatics. The question here is, what is the role of grammar? Grammar are rules of a language. So basically, we're talking about sound, syllables under phonology, morphemes or words under morphology, phrases, clauses, and sentences under syntax. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, meaning is also part of language. So, is meaning important in grammar? The answer is, of course, yes, because semantics is part of grammar. Those sounds and images or words need to be assigned meaning, which is the area of semantics. People learn the meaning of words in a basic fashion at first, but then as facility with the language grows, more complex meanings emerge. Semantics explains the various types of meaning that exist within a language. granting insight into how a person builds ability and understanding with that language. Semantics, as part of grammar, is critical to a language because without it, there would be no real structure to a language. Without the basic, intrinsic understanding of semantics that comes along with the language acquisition, speakers could string words together in any order they wanted, and listeners would have a difficult time deriving meaning from those sentences. Semantics provides speakers a structure to use when they need to transform words into sentences and creating meaning. Now let us discuss the difference between semantics and language manipulation. Earlier, I have already told you that semantics is the area of linguistics interested in meaning and the many ways that we can describe it. Language manipulation is redefining negative or positive words, phrases, or ideas to change their meaning to make it more appealing or to support an argument or idea without changing the true merits of the words or phrases. This is done because certain words, phrases, or ideas becomes sensitive in societies due to their negative definitions. When these definitions prevent governments or corporations from their goals, they will sidestep the problem by redefining or rephrasing words or using strawman tactics to manipulate the public into accepting something they otherwise would not accept. So how does language manipulation work? Again, to rename or relabel an act or object for the purpose of acquiring different results, outcomes, or perspective can be classified as semantic manipulation. So the distortion of the original semantics can be motivated by wealth, power, or to maintain the status quo within an organization that is reluctant to change. Likewise, semantic manipulation can be used to provide you with false information without media and especially pseudoscience. In doing so, semantic manipulation can not only be used to maintain a certain course within a system, but can also be used to influence it into a different direction. Let us remember that language manipulation is commonly used in politics and media, and one strategy used is doublespeak. Doublespeak is a deliberately evasive language that seeks to hide something discomforting, offensive, or unpleasant idea. Somewhat like a euphemism, except that euphemisms are short phrases or words, while doublespeak consists of at least one full sentence or several sentences. The strategy doublespeak in language manipulation works in this way. So take a look at this example. The first sentence goes like this. Unfortunately, civilians were killed in the airstrikes over Iraq. Versus U.S. Air Force planes killed civilians while conducting strikes over Iraq. So, as you notice, the first sentence omits who is responsible for the death and seeks to hide this fact. I am done with my discussion. At this time, I'd like to have Ma'am Maril and BANAGODOS to speak about her topic, so I'll finish up by saying thank you for your attention.
In 1973, the linguist Roger Brown identified several categories of meaning that all children seem to express, and he called these semantic categories, which literally means meaning categories. So in my presentation today, we will be talking about 4 of those semantic categories that Roger Brown had identified. What are those 4? They are the agent, object, action, and location. Let's first talk about the agent. Brown noted that children usually make a distinction between animate beings and inanimate objects. Animate beings are things that are alive, such as dogs, cats, horses, people, and so on. All of these are capable of acting under their own volition. So Brown used the term agent to describe the semantic category that includes words that refer to animate beings. So examples would include mommy, daddy, and the like. The next semantic category is object. In contrast to animate beings, inanimate objects are not alive and they are therefore not capable of acting independently or of making decisions. The semantic category used to include all inanimate objects is simply labeled object. This category would therefore include such things as table, spoon, cup, and similar, usually concrete objects. The third category is called action. Words in this category which express the idea of action include such words as kick, run, bark, and so on. And last but not the least, we have location. Words in this semantic category express the notion of place. They may indicate where an agent or object is or moves to, and where an action is performed. Examples may include garden, house, path, and so on. So how are these four related, or how can they be related to one another? So Buckley suggests that children begin to combine words into short combinations when their expressive vocabulary has reached 50 to 100 words. However, the two-word utterances that children produce are not the product of random combination of words. Rather, children are systematic and logical in the way they combine words to express meaning. So Roger Brown noted that children produce utterances by relating one semantic category to another. And we will consider this in the next slides. So the first in the two-word utterances of a child is the agent plus action. It is a common relation found in the majority of children between the ages of about 20 to 30 months. So let us consider this example. The agent that we have is daddy, and the action is go. Remember that agent is used for animate objects, while action is the category for those inanimate ones. So here the word daddy represents an animate being, one that can act by its own will and make independent decisions. And the word go expresses the meaning of an action, so in this case, going. So further examples are here. So again, the first example, the dog, refers to an animate being. So while a dog may not be considered capable of making decisions in the same way a human is, it's nevertheless alive and can act independently. So it's therefore considered to be an agent. Then the word bark is another expression of an action. And in this case, an action that's typically associated with a dog and not with a daddy. So other examples are here like mommy and run, bird and sing, and horse and jump. The next combination is the action plus object. This is another common semantic relation, and the example that we have here is kick and ball. So here, kick is an action in the same way that bark was considered an action in our previous example. The inanimate object in this two-word utterance is clearly the ball. Now, the exact meaning the child intends when uttering a phrase like kick ball needs to be gleaned from the context in which it is said. So for most children, the so-called two-word stage is completed by 30 months of age, and the next stage of development involves the child adding a third word to the two-word combinations. This is called the three-word stage. So the two-word combinations are therefore used as the building blocks for the longer three-word utterances. So the first of the three-word stage or the three-word utterances is agent plus action plus location. So consider the earlier example of agent plus action, daddy go. Using this as the foundation, the child can expand it by adding a third semantic category. For example, the child may add the category of location as follows. Home. So the agent is daddy, object is go, and the semantic category that's added is home. So here, home represents a location to which daddy may go. The child has thus expanded the agent plus action combination to the longer and more specific agent plus action plus location.
It is easy to see then how two-word combinations can be used as building blocks to produce a variety of different meanings by the addition of different location words. And the next combination for the three-word utterances, or for the three-word utterance rather, is the action plus object plus location. So a similar development can be seen by reconsidering our earlier example of kickball, which was described as an action plus object. So again, the child can expand this two-word utterance by the addition of a location word. For example, the child could indicate where he or she wishes to kick the ball. So in our example, it's in the garden. So the utterance has expanded from the two-word building block of action plus object to action plus object plus location. So obviously, there are more possible combinations and expansions of two-word utterances than are presented here in my presentation. However, the examples provided should give some idea of the systematic and logical way in which children develop longer utterances and how they express meaning, which is the whole point of semantics. So in the next two topics that I will be discussing, we will understand how each word and how they are arranged can contribute to meaning making. So now let's talk about the principle of compositionality. You might remember that the smallest building blocks for syntax or semantics are called morphemes. They are expressions that can't be divided into meaningful sub-expressions. For instance, cat is a morpheme because it has no meaningful subparts, while cats, the plural one, is not a morpheme because it can be decomposed into cat and s. In this sense, morphemes are the primitives in syntax and semantics, and we call the set of all morphemes of a language the lexicon. So the syntax combines morphemes in the lexicon to produce complex expressions such as noun phrases, verb phrases, sentences, and etc. So since the syntax allows sentences and other complex expressions to be embedded under other sentences, it generates infinitely many sentences. So notice that the syntax itself is a finite mechanism, but it produces infinitely many expressions. So the idea that we will pursue here is that semantics does essentially the same thing as syntax, except that instead of combining expressions, semantics combines meanings. For instance, it takes the meaning of the word a and the meaning of man and combine them to produce the meaning of a man. Furthermore, we assume that the semantics combines meanings of various expressions, simple or complex, in such a way that the compositionality principle is respected. So the principle of compositionality states that the meaning of a complex phrase is determined solely by the meanings of its parts and their syntax. A semantic system obeying this principle can deal with infinitely many expressions. Let's take this sentence, "A man saw Mary." According to the compositionality principle, the truth condition or meaning of this sentence is determined only by the meanings of its parts, namely a, man, saw, and Mary, and how these expressions are arranged. So it should be stressed here that how the words are arranged has semantic consequences. Let's look at these two sentences here. A man saw Mary and Mary saw a man. It's clearly very easy to see that these sentences have different truth conditions or meanings despite being made up of the same morphemes. Although they are made up of the same words, because of their arrangement or because of their syntactic structure, their meanings differ. So, we can assume that semantics is in a way dependent on the syntax. So in order to incorporate this idea directly to our semantic theory, we understand the principle of compositionality in a strict way. That is, we assume that the meaning of a complex phrase is determined by the meanings of its immediate daughters. So here's a concrete example illustrating this idea. Let us assume that the sentence, "A man saw Mary," has the following syntactic structure. So you have the sentence here, and it's divided into two phrases, PP and VP. So, "A man saw Mary." So the compositionality principle, in the strict sense, says that the meaning of the sentence, "A man saw Mary," with this structure should be determined by the meaning of "a man" and the meaning of "saw Mary" and nothing else. It furthermore tells us that the meaning of "a man" in turn should be determined by the meaning of "a" and the meaning of "man" and nothing else. Likewise, the meaning of "saw Mary" should be determined by the meaning of "saw" and the meaning of "Mary" and nothing else. So an important consequence of this is that all we need to remember is the meanings of these individual words or morphemes and how to combine them. So it's quite confusing to grasp the meaning of the principle of compositionality. So in order for us to understand better the principle of compositionality, let's try to look at this. I have here a mathematical equation. So in mathematics, in order for us to arrive at 4, we need to add 2 and 2. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's similar with this. So we have a sentence here, "Bob ate the apple." We definitely know that this sentence has meaning. So how are we going to arrive at the meaning of this sentence? So we will take the meaning of each of the individual words. So we take the meaning of Bob. So M will stand for meaning. So Bob has M1. 8 has meaning, as well as the apple. But we not only want the individual meanings of these words, but we want to see how they combine together to form this meaning. So we know that if we combine the word "the" and "apple," so we'll get M5. And we know that if we combine 8 with the phrase "the apple," in syntax we'll have it as the verb phrase, and we will label this as our M6. And our meaning will be M7. And in order for us to arrive at M7, we will add M6 with Bob, which is our M1. And this is how we arrive at our meaning. We can definitely arrive here if we follow the principle of compositionality, which basically means that we need to look at the individual parts of the sentence, which are the words, combine them together, and take into consideration how they should be combined. We can't just combine Bob with the word apple and arrive at its original meaning. Or we can just combine 8 with the word "the." So we have to take into consideration how the words will be combined in order to arrive the exact meaning. So I have here another example. The sentence, "I love coffee." So first, we have to combine the meaning of love and coffee. And then, we will add "I" to the result of the meaning of love and coffee. So love must be combined with coffee first, and then "I" will be combined to the result of love and coffee. So it's kind of similar to math. I hope you're following my explanation. So it's quite similar to this. So for example, you are given this equation, 10 divided by 5 times 2 is equal to blank. So if you do it like this, or if you do it this way, you try to solve the first equation first. 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2, and then you do the next equation, which is times 2. It will give you the answer 4. Okay? But we know that in mathematics, there is a rule. You can't do the division first. Okay? So if you do it like this, you put a bracket here, it will become like this. So you will first answer the 5 times 2, so it's 10, and you will end up getting 10 divided by 10, which is 1. So there is a big difference between the answers. So it's very similar in the principle of compositionality. You have to take into consideration the words that you will combine to arrive at the proper meaning. Now, the principle of compositionality is not always right or can't always be followed. So it cannot be applied to idioms or idiomatic phrases. Idiomatic phrases are phrases with meanings that can be predicted based on the meanings of individual words, and the usual semantic rules for combining meanings do not apply. So here are some of the examples of idioms: drop the ball, put his foot in his mouth, and hit it off. Even if we consider even if we try to combine, or even if we try to think of all different combinations of how to combine the meanings of these words, we cannot arrive at the literal meaning of this, because idiomatic phrases should not be taken literally. Now we are down to my last topic, which is the relationship between words. But before this, let's have first a short activity which is called word association. So let's do this activity, which is called the word association activity. So when I hover the mouse over the red dot, a word will appear. So try to think of the first word that will come to your mind upon seeing the word. Okay, so this will be short. Let's go. And we're done. So our short activity is over. So I hope you were able to associate some words with some of the words that I have presented you. So if you're like most people, maybe you give another color such as green or blue when you saw the word red, or perhaps you thought the word color. So in any case, you connected one word, red, to other words. So this is one way our minds store words and how we remember their arbitrarily assigned meanings by connecting them to each other. So there are other connections that exist too. So we have here a diagram that represents signs and meaning. So this can help us visualize how the four elements connect to each other. We have the sign, other signs, referent, and users. So we have the sign itself that represents a word or a morpheme. So the sign is a word that we are attaching meaning to. And we have the thing the sign arbitrarily refers to, which is the referent, okay, or the real world item or idea that the word refers to. Then we have the other signs or other words in the language, and we have the users of the sign or the speakers of a language. So meaning can be created by using all of these different connections. We will now look at each of these connections between a sign and the other elements in the language system to see how meaning is created. So as the word association game showed, we seem to store words together in our brains by their relationships to each other. These interconnections have given rise to the concept of a language web. We will start our exploration with So as the word association game showed earlier, we seem to store more words together in our brains by their relationships to each other. These interconnections have given rise to the concept of a language web. We will start with our exploration of how meaning is attached to words by looking at the various kinds of relationships that exist between words in a language. So linguists have identified and named the kinds of semantic relationships between words, covering many more connection types than are learned in grade school. So here are they: synonym, antonym, hyponym, homonym, heteronym, homograph, and polysemous words. We will discuss them one by one. Let's first talk about synonyms. We're all familiar with this. They're words with similar meanings in similar contexts. Examples are large, big, buff, hack, couch, sofa, quick, and fast. We have the antonyms, or words with opposite meanings in some respect. In antonyms, you have the so-called complementary pairs. They are direct opposites or all or nothing opposites, such as alive or dead, asleep or awake, or pregnant or not pregnant. While we also have the gradable pairs. So the gradable pairs of antonyms are those that are on opposite ends of a spectrum with many points in between. So we have the hot or cold, and in between hot or cold, we have warm, tepid, cool, and chilly. And light, dark, in between them is bright, light, dim, and dark. And old, young, and tall and short. Definitely there are words in between these two. Aside from those two, we also have the relational opposites in antonyms, and they show a symmetry of sorts. So give and receive, borrow and lend, teacher student, up and down. Next, hyponyms. These are words that refer to members of a larger category. For example, football. Football is a representation of sports. In the same way like oak with trees, red in color, and beagle and dog. Homonyms or homophones. Words that are different in meaning but are pronounced the same. Here, spelling is irrelevant since they are pronounced the same. Tail and tail, two, bat, which is the animal, and the bat, which is the stick. Next is the heteronyms. These are words that are spelled the same but pronounced differently. You have the lead, which is the guide, or the lead is the metal. Dove is a bird, or dove, which is the past tense of dive. Bass is a fish, and bass in music. Wind as a breeze, and wind as crank up. And then we have homographs. So these are words that are spelled the same but have different meanings and may have different pronunciations. We have taken the same examples from the previous one, which is the dove and the dove, pen, and lead and lead. And last but not the least, we have the polysemous words, or words that have multiple meanings that are related conceptually in some way. like bear, which is to tolerate, and bear as in carry, glare or shine intensely, and another glare, which means stare intensely, writer, upper. So these are the various ways in which words are related to each other through meaning. So now that we have known this, let us look at the application of all these relationships in teaching English, since we're all English teachers. The teaching of relationships between words is part of the teaching of vocabulary. And research shows that when teaching vocabulary, it helps to first introduce frequently occurring words first. However, since words are interrelated, when it's time to introduce a word related to words students have already learned, it is helpful to teach the interrelationships, the synonyms, antonyms, and hyponyms, and other other words that are related to each other in meanings.
Hello, great day. My name is Teacher Jem, and we are going to talk about semantics in the field of linguistics. When we talk about semantics, we basically talk about meanings, and meanings. For it is the study of meanings, right? This, of course, does not necessarily correspond to grammaticality because many ungrammatical sentences are still meaningful. The woman beautiful is my mother. I'll happy if I get your paper. These are common mistakes of natives, non-natives, and near-native speakers of the language. And they are perfectly comprehensible despite the fact that they do not follow the, and I quote, rules of English. So semantics looks at relationships in language and looks at how meanings are created, which is an important part of understanding how language works, of course. And let's start with this one, homonym. Homonym sounds the same as another word but differs in meaning. And there are two kinds. We have homophone, pronounced the same as another word but differs in meaning and is spelled differently. Examples: soul is soul. The first soul is the one we see on our shoes, of course, and the next soul is the spiritual or immaterial part of the human. Another one is steal. Steal. The first steal is something that we should not do to someone committed, right? And the second steal is the metal that we could use when the above action was done. So again, those are homophones. And we also have homograph, share the same written form but have different meaning and are spelled the same. Rose, rose. Rose is the flower, and the second rose is the past tense of rice. We also have pen, pen. The first pen is the one we use for writing, and the second pen, the one we use for our pets when they are uncontrollable. Okay, and because of that, homonym will lead us to the next concept related to semantics, which is ta-da, ambiguity. One of the aspects of how meaning works in language is that one, ambiguity. A sentence is ambiguous when it has two or more possible meanings, but, well, how does ambiguity arise in language? Mm, a sentence can be ambiguous for either of the following reasons. The first one is lexical ambiguity. A sentence is lexically ambiguous when it can have two or more possible meanings. These are the examples. Prostitutes appeal to the Pope. Oopsie. And prostitutes appeal to the Pope about their concerns. The first sentence couldn't or could give confusion to people because, of course, prostitutes could never appeal to the Pope. That's why the second sentence has about their concern, because as we all know, if we provide proper context to a certain sentence, that would help us avoid ambiguity. So the phrase about their concerns gave the clear meaning of the sentence why prostitutes appeal to the Pope. We also have structural ambiguity. Ooh, a sentence is structurally ambiguous if it can have two or more possible meanings due to the words it contains being able to be combined in different ways, which create different meanings. Example: enraged cow injures farmer with axe. In this sentence, the ambiguity arises from the fact that the with axe can either refer to the farmer or to the act of enduring being carried out by the cow with axe. We also have I killed the man with a toothbrush. You could say, or this could mean, I killed a man holding a toothbrush. This could also mean, I killed the man using a toothbrush. So that is what we call structural ambiguity. Okay. And aside from what we just talked through, there are other semantics notation and terms that we should get familiar with. We have here paraphrase. Paraphrase have the same truth conditions. If one is true, the other one must also be true. Example: the boys like the girls. The girls are liked by the boys. Sentence 1 was paraphrased, but it still conveys the same meaning. And this, so was the second example. John gave the book to Chris. John gave Chris the book. Even though, again, it was paraphrased, still it contains the same meaning. Okay, we also have mutual entailment. Mutual entailment means each sentence must be true for the other to be true. Example: Mike is married to Rachel, and Rachel is John's wife. That's mutual entailment, as well as Chris is a man, thus Chris is human. Okay, so both of the sentences are true. That's why the other one is also true. We also have asymmetrical entailment. Only one of the sentences must be true for the other to be true. Ooh. But that sentence may be true without the other sentence necessarily having to be true. Rachel is Mike's wife. Mike is married. Mike is married does not entail Rachel being his wife. But certainly, Rachel is Mike's wife. Another one is Rachel has two brothers, entails Rachel is not an only child. But Rachel not being an only child does not entail Rachel having two brothers. And for the last one, we have contradiction. Sentences contradict each other when one sentence is true and the other cannot be true. Example: Rachel is an only child. Rachel's brother is called Phil. That clearly shows contradiction, because if you say Rachel is an only child, certainly Rachel could not have a brother. Okay, and another one is Alex is alive. Alex died last week. If Alex is really alive, then why did he just die last week? Okay, anyway, those are the facts about semantics and the field of linguistics. I hope you were able to learn something